Hey guys, have you seen the news recently? But like in all seriousness, I've been meaning to make this video for a very long time because if you didn't know, Green Day is one of my favorite artists and their album American Idiot is one of my favorite albums of like all time. I had the amazing pleasure of seeing them live this year. And this was a video I wanted to make in like September, but just never got around to it, so why not make it now, you know? But anyways, today we will be joined by my handy dandy Sabrina Carpenter journal where I took notes on the whole album. So instead of reading off of my computer, I will be reading off my journal. Hopefully it's not too distracting. I'll try not to get it in frame, but I'll also try not to look down a lot when I talk. No promises though. We'll see how it goes. If it's bad, you guys can yell at me in the comments. If it's good, you guys can just tell me how much you love me in the comments. That would be awesome too. With all that being said, let me introduce myself first if you're new. Hi, welcome to my channel where I talk about music and music related things. I talk about artists, albums, observations, and events that I see happening in the music world. So if that's something that you guys seem to find interesting, you're welcome to stick around, maybe like and subscribe if you're here. If you've never heard of Green Day or American Idiot, first of all, wow. Second of all, here's a little bit of a really brief introduction. Green Day is made up of 3 members, kind of 1, 2, 3. Billy Joe Armstrong, Trey Cool, and the other one. So before we actually get into the video itself and talk about the album, I just want to talk about the points that I really want to hit, where I want to talk about the history of, not really the album, but you know, the time period that it's in. I want to talk about the album itself because it is a concept album and it does have a storyline, so I really do want to talk about that. And I want to really talk about how it holds up today, you know, 20 years later in 2024. How exactly is this album still relevant? Why are people still talking about it, especially in light of recent events? Talking about the album American Idiot itself, it pulled very heavily from themes like Tommy by The Who's or Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club by The Beatles. And the band themselves embarked on a more rock opera version of this album, which was the kind of like overall, I don't want to say basic concept, but original concept was for this album to be a rock opera. The album itself was also one of their very first to openly address the politics at the time, allowing the punk mentality to be more easily accessible to the youth and just people of today in general. Or people at the time really, but people of today too. But in fact, the only real like political songs on the album are the title track American Idiot and Holiday. The album in its essence is just an outline of 2004 America. It's a coming of age story and it's both progressive and timeless. And I feel like for a lot of listeners, it evolves with the person as time goes on. Because when I think about it in my personal experiences, I'll be so honest, I heard this album for the first time in like elementary school and I was like 9 and I didn't understand anything that was going on. I just really liked to listen to Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Don't ask me why, I was just sad all the time. But as I've like grown up, I've really related to this album a lot. I feel like I relate to it more as each year passes by, especially now considering that I'm almost 19. But at the end of the day, it's really just an album about teen angst that's really stood the test of time. And I feel like some of the like main themes of the album that aren't just the politics itself are, there's a lot about drug addiction in it, there's a lot about heartbreak, a loss of self, and just the cultural constraints of America. It kind of builds on the theme of saying that anything is possible in America and you could be anyone or anything that you want to be. A dream that was definitely trying to be rewritten and rebuilt in 2004 after 9/11. And a lot of the lyrics in this album can be easily misinterpreted or manipulated to fit a narrative that you want it to fit, which I think works better in trying to relate to each of the listeners and their lives. You can take almost any lyric in the album and really just relate it to yourself at this point. Some quick facts about the album itself. It was the 4th best-selling album in 2006, and it was really impactful for paving the way of the youth to discover more harder and heavier music in general. But in regard to the actual album itself and the storyline of it, we start off with American Idiot, which is probably the only song that really has almost nothing to do with the actual storyline itself. The song is more of an attack on Bush's presidency and just kind of a look at what the country was like at the time. Every phrase is rather antagonistic and and it jabs at the government. It's honestly just one big hater call, like almost every true citizen in a post 9/11 society. The narrator claims that he's mind-fucked, saying that he doesn't want to be turned into an idiot under a red presidency, not wanting to be isolated or detested by the decisions made by the government. The band themselves said that they were inspired by listening to the song That's How I Like It by Lynyrd Skynyrd, saying that they wanted to do everything to piss people off. The song overviews with many themes and ideas that are brought back into the actual storyline of the album itself. It was mainly just a warning to the people of America, saying don't let them take your personality away. The next song itself being Jesus of Suburbia, which is broken up into 5 separate parts, the first part just being called Jesus of Suburbia. The song itself begins off with a sarcastic mention to the normalcy of his own messed up life, saying there's nothing wrong with me. And the song itself has heavy allusions to alcohol, drugs, parental abandonment, and debt in the land of make-believe. And it introduces our main character, who at this point we'll be calling him Jesus of Suburbia. The second part of the song is called City of the Damned, beginning with the lyrics home is where your heart is, saying that some people really just don't fit in, and Jesus of Suburbia is one of these people, where he points out that in this time people really only care about themselves, saying the lost children with dirty faces today, no one really seems to care, and saying that while he's surrounded by this indifference, he seems to not really care at all either, with lyrics like reading graffiti off a bathroom stall, like the lonely scriptures of a shopping mall. The verses of the song are filled with a lot of sorrow. It's very slow, very melodic. He confesses about the strains of his lifeless town. The next section of the song being called I Don't Care, saying everyone is so full of shit, born and raised by hypocrites, where he brings up his feelings of kind of existentialism, where he says if no one really cares about him, then why should he care about anyone else? Saying that he's really tired of this land of make-believe where it kind of doesn't really even believe in him. And the point of view of the song kind of starts to shift from Jesus of Suburbia more into his followers, who also share this hatred that he has or his indifference with society, where it comes on with lyrics saying we are the kids of war and peace from Anaheim to the Middle East, the disciples of Jesus of Suburbia. Kind of brings on this idea of a revolt, which is heavily juxtapositioned in the next part of the song, being called Dearly Beloved, where it's more introspective, asking if his thoughts are, I guess, normal, really. Just asking the audience if he sounds like a normal person or if he sounds a little bit psycho. We see a more softer side of his personality in this song with lyrics like, oh therapy, can you please fill the void? Hearing that he wants to break free and he's tired of being alone and rejected, saying, are we demented or am I disturbed? He continues on by addressing the public and explaining his mental state, really. While this part of the song really is just a clear commentary on how teens deal with their inner conflict, especially those days and now too. The details of the song more allude to how parents medicate, but they don't actually really listen to their teens. And the very last part of the song is called Tales of a Broken Home, where he explains that he's not really living, but more just existing in the world. And at this point in the song, he decides that he's going to run away. He really wants a new life. He doesn't want to walk on the same line or live the same life forever, when especially he doesn't really have faith in him, nor does anybody else. And this ending to the song really provides more closure to his thoughts, with lyrics like, to live and not to breathe is to die in tragedy, and I run away to the light of the masochist. In this case, referring to the government who runs the city and enjoys watching the struggles of the citizens. So as we've established now, Jesus of Suburbia is our protagonist in the story, where his name itself kind of brings up this idea of crossing the line between church and state. His name being a rather biblical name, he is later on going to be the leader of this revolt. I don't really know where I'm going with this tangent, but just keep it in mind that his name is pretty important. What's more important about this song is that it really broke every rule that people thought a Green Day song was. It purged everything and threw it all out there. It was kind of this new beginning for the band, really. The next song on the album, another rather political song, Holiday, it predicts or rather describes a World War III. Beginning off with the lyrics, the shame the ones who died without a name, referring to the fallen soldiers and victims of political battles, and society as a whole, saying that war isn't the answer to all of this. To an extent, the song could be seen as anti-Bush, looking at the disgust to power-hungry people, saying pulverize the Eiffel Towers who criticize your government, and kill all that don't agree. The title itself could be a commentary on how the president always seems to be on Holiday, as this is definitely one of the mostly overt songs that they've done on the record. So, and to put it in more of a timeline, Jesus of Suburbia takes place on March 3rd, according to the liner notes, and this song takes place on April 1st. So it's been about a month that he's run away, and he's now looking at this sort of precipice for a war that's gonna happen. More than that, he's declaring his own independence while he's on the streets. A lot of the lyrics tend to use our rather than my or I, indicating that he has followers beside him who agree with his ideals, who want to look up to Jesus of Suburbia as someone who's going to save them. While our protagonist stands tall and he will not fall for the deception of the government. This song goes on to transition into one of my favorite songs, Boulevard of Broken Dreams. And just another fun fact, this song was a massive hit in 2004. The song, just for reference, is taking place on April 2nd now, so it's been a day after Holiday. Whereas our protagonist, Jesus of Suburbia, is entering the city, he's feeling this sort of loneliness in him. Where originally he was excited, he was full of anticipation, now that he's inside of the city, he realizes he doesn't exactly know where he's going, he doesn't exactly know where he is, he's kind of all alone. He says that he feels that he's surrounded by this sort of lifelessness, and his vital signs are the only reason that he knows he's still alive. With this lyric of walking down the line that divides me somewhere in my mind, it brings up the idea of this new character, I guess, named Saint Jimmy, which we'll get into in a minute. But Saint Jimmy is less of a separate character and more of a separate personality from Jesus. They are technically both the same person, but two sides of the same person. Because now that Jesus is in a new city, he wants to be a new person. He wants to be stronger. He doesn't want to be the vulnerable. He doesn't want to be the soft, the open Jesus of Suburbia. He wants to be Saint Jimmy. He wants to be the leader of the revolt. He wants to be strong. He wants to be popular. He wants to be a leader. This is what Jimmy is. This is not who Jesus is. More than that though, the song is an emotional hangover, kind of. Coming off of Holiday with these loud drums, these big guitars, we fade into Boulevard of Broken Dreams, which is acoustic, it's slow, it's sad, it's very different. The lonely road that's described in the song can be taken as his life. Or if not his life, then the life of the listener. And rather than a scream for help, this song accepts loneliness as he becomes used to it. At this point, he's really just dreaming of someone to find him, someone to take him off the streets, as he's waiting for a change to happen in his life. And while it's fairly straightforward in its themes about loneliness, about isolation, about just wanting to be found by someone or just wanting to find someone, it's a rather bitter pill to swallow. I mean, like, listening to the song as a 9-year-old, no, I did not know half of what he was talking about. I did not know what a Boulevard of Broken Dreams was. But, you know, even as a child, I knew this is a sad song. It's about a sad guy who's going through a lot. And while this song is that, there are so many more layers to it now. More than anything, as it fades, it symbolizes the discontent that he has in his own life. And it showed that something as simple as just good songwriting can produce a strong artistic statement. And the song is just effortlessly timeless in its vocals, and it feels the same way as it did 20 years ago. The bluntness and the honesty of the words just make it unforgettable, with lyrics like, "It's home to me and I walk alone." As our protagonist accepts his new life as this leader and this martyr, but he realizes that he's alone in his new life at the moment. And more importantly, this second verse of the song, it foreshadows this newer, stronger persona that takes over Jesus. And of course, I'm no psychiatrist, I'm no psychologist, and I'm not gonna diagnose this fictional character, but he shows very obvious signs of what could possibly be BPD in this new character persona of his, paralleling songs like Quadrophenia by The Who. Fortunately though, we won't have to wait too much longer for him to finally find someone, as the next song, called Are We the Waiting, is a soliloquy as we see that Jesus is slowly losing his mind. The song itself follows his lonely themes of before as he continues his walk feeling lost in the city with nowhere to run to. Though now he has this newfound purpose, he still feels isolated. He questions if he's on the right path and introspects mostly about himself. This down-tempo ballad is is full of percussion and just simple guitar. It's not as sorrowful as the song before it, but it's sad nonetheless. And it has really similar lyrics like lost and found, city bound in my dreams, and second thoughts are like an isolation. He acts like he doesn't really care about his friends or family, but he's really just repressing his feelings at this point. The song itself pinpointing his mental state. As many people in 2004 felt pretty confused after 9/11, and they felt like they were just lost and just waiting for something or someone to connect them back to the world, really. Similarly, the chorus of this song is filled with many voices singing the title as he screams, as he's now found his people and he is now a leader. This leader being his persona of Saint Jimmy, and the song itself taking place on Easter Sunday. I'm really hoping that all of this is making sense in like a linear perspective, but like just for reference, this is what my notes look like, so I'm trying my best, guys, please. Like just stay with me. I'm trying my hardest to make sure that it makes sense, but let me know if there's anything that you guys have like questions about. I love this album so much. I love talking about it so much. I will gladly answer anything in the comments. But essentially, when the war began, many people felt isolated in the country, and now they were having second thoughts about what they should have done, what they could have done, and that all they really could do was wait. But wait for what? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because the next song is titled Saint Jimmy, who is who they were waiting for. Saint Jimmy abruptly cuts off the song before it, which is very true to his character. He's very brash, he's very harsh, he's a presence. And as Jesus of Suburbia kind of goes off the deep end, we are introduced to Saint Jimmy. The song itself is harder, it's faster, it's more traditionally punk. And it's a very pivotal point in Jesus of Suburbia's story and the album itself. As it continues to take place on Easter Sunday, it represents the rebirth of the protagonist, with lyrics like, "The rage and love, the story of my life, Jesus of Suburbia is a lie." It's essentially saying that everything before it was pointless, and we are now starting over with a new personality and new followers. He's a rebel, he's a cold-blooded citizen of the city. He's described overall as a badass SOB that impresses all the boys and girls. He's confident, he's self-sufficient, he is that guy. I wouldn't say we love him. We tolerate him at the moment, you know. I have mixed feelings about Saint Jimmy. I mean, he's very in your face, he's very impulsive, he makes decisions very quickly, he does everything very quickly. He's just pow, 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 pow. He's that kind of guy, you know? But he is legendary, if anything. With lyrics like, "My name is Jimmy and you better not wear it out." I don't know if any of you guys have seen Fight Club, but Jimmy is kind of like Tyler Durden. And while Jesus is the narrator, he transforms into being this disruptive, selfish version of himself, saying that Jimmy is a product of war and fear that's been victimized. He's the resident leader of the Lost and Found. So while asking the band if Jimmy and Jesus of Suburbia were the same person, it was originally thought that they would be the same person, but technically it could be like two different people. For the sake of this video, we're gonna take it as a split personality sort of situation, just for ease of talking about it, because that's kind of how I explained it in my notes, and I don't really want to go and rewrite all my notes as if they were two separate people. But Jimmy himself kind of describes this self-destructive path that Jesus of Suburbia could have taken if it were him, but he was just so traumatized that he had to create a whole different person, you know? Now, the next set of songs begins with Me Novacaine, where now Jesus wants to take drugs to kind of subdue all of his feelings that he's having. He continues to ask Jimmy for reassurance in his life. It's a ballad, it has melodic guitars, it has a fragile voice. It's a song for the yearners, but in the sense that he's not yearning for someone else, but something else. But the chorus has invasive guitars, it has frantic percussion, it has really in-your-face vocals. I feel like it kind of represents this thematic dissonance that we see between our two characters, where Jimmy is brash, he's bold, he's brave, he's a lot of other B words, in a way that this song is kind of the final transformation from Jesus to Jimmy, with lyrics like, "Take away the sensation inside, this bittersweet migraine in my head," and Jimmy says it's better than here, with Jesus saying, "Tell me, Jimmy, I won't feel a thing." Jimmy is kind of Jesus' savior in a similar way to how Tyler is in Fight Club. His insecurities, his fears of his new life are all just taken away. There's just so much for him in the sense that he has to split off and become Jimmy as someone who is so much stronger than him that he can take on these new feelings that he's feeling in the new city, as he kind of commits himself completely to Jimmy. And outside of the plot of the story, the song is just kind of about feeling shitty, honestly, and just not wanting to feel like that anymore. It's about carrying emotional baggage and just wanting to feel numb, honestly. It's not as much about drug experimentation or anything as it's more about just taking on the pain. And at this point, Jimmy is still all in Jesus' head. And this now takes place a couple months later in June 13th. And lyrics in the song also allude to an unknown lover that we meet in the next song, with lyrics like, "Give me a kiss goodnight and everything will be alright, kiss the demons out of my dreams." And now, in the next song, we are introduced to our new lover with the song "She's a Rebel." And her name, as she's referred to in this album, is Whatsername. She's rebellious, she's wild, she's free-spirited, she's a strong-willed protester that Jimmy meets. And she really sticks to her beliefs. According to the artists themselves, Whatsername was the same girl who inspired songs like She, Amanda, and Sassafras Roots. The song is kind of a parallel to the Song of St. Jimmy, where it's similar in structure, sound, and story. It's hostile, it's gritty, it's hypnotic, and on top of everything, it's authoritative, with the lyric of "She's holding my heart like a hand grenade" inspiring the album cover. Jimmy is infatuated by her, by how similar she is to him. She is like a dream. He loves her. He is obsessed with her. She is everything he could ever think of in a woman. And he views her as extremely important to his rebellion. And she's also the love of his life. I mean, he has lyrics like, "Is she trouble like I'm trouble?" calling her the mother of all bombs and saying that she sings to the revolution, the dawning of our lives. But at the end of the day, Jimmy just wants validation from her. That's all she really is to her. She may be extraordinary, but she's fragile as a bomb. And a little bit more outside of the plot, she could be referring to America itself, as especially in the time period of this album, the country was definitely in rebellion. And she's really been a rebel from the start. I mean, if you think about like the American Revolution and stuff like that. But the next track is called Extraordinary Girl. In the case of the song itself, it's really the introduction that sets it apart from every other song. I mean, it's definitely something that you remember. And while a lot of the other songs in this album kind of seamlessly transition into each other or abruptly cut off each other, this one it's different. There's really no other word to use except for extraordinary for it. The rhythm at the beginning is heavily inspired by Indian music, and it has almost this sort of like tribal beat to it. And it's such a distinct part of the album that it almost feels out of place. The song itself gives us a sort of deeper look into Whatsername as a person and what her life is like and how she's been holding up. With lyrics like, "She sees the mirror of herself, an image she wants to sell to anyone who wants to buy." But again, this mirror line can be interpreted outside of the storyline of the album, where again she could be in referring to America, saying that her lonely tears would be the political isolation that they felt in the early 2000s and the image of the American dream influencing the world. Or she could be the societal image of women itself, changing as the years go by and overlooking inner beauty, kind of succumbing to the pressure and expectation rather than letting himself be your truest self. Alluding to her low self-esteem, how she'll kind of just take anyone who will take her, her sort of desperation in this relationship, really. And it's almost to a manipulative extent, but she was still attracted to Jimmy. Like, don't get me wrong, she still loved him. But as they kind of like fall out of their honeymoon phase, their relationship crumbled like almost immediately. Because I think what happened is they realized they were a little bit too similar to each other. And I think more as they ended up seeing the darker parts and the darker aspects of each other's lives, they realized that either they weren't ready for a relationship or they just couldn't handle each other on top of themselves. They were just a little bit too self-destructive for each other. Because at the end of the day, she's a true rebel while Jimmy is more of a persona, if anything. And he kind of molds himself to be who she wants him to be. I think that's really why they ended up not working. And at the bottom of his heart, he's not Jimmy. He's Jesus of Suburbia, you know? With lyrics like, "Some days it's not worth trying," as in trying to be someone you're not, or trying to fix a relationship that was kind of doomed from the start. Jimmy, at the end of the day, was really just her most recent obsession. She wants someone to like match her freak or like her self-destructive freak. And this Jimmy guy, he's a poser. He is terrified for this rebellion. He's seen what Whatsername can do, and he immediately backs off. He's like, this is not for me. No thank you. This next set of songs, starting with Letterbomb, marks the beginning of the end of the album. The song itself taking place in mid-August after their summer romance. This is where Whatsername leaves Jimmy, and this is where Jimmy begins to really self-destruct. The song itself has rather disturbing themes, beginning off with a voice either being what's her name or just the voice in Jimmy's head saying nobody likes you, everyone left you, they're all out without you having fun. And kind of like an eerie, almost like scary movie tone before the instrumentals just completely go off. And those first lyrics kind of being a jab at how he really has no friends or a social life. Or it could just be his insecurities being voiced out. At this point of the song, what's her name has left him, calling him too melodramatic and not self-destructive enough, saying that she would be leaving him with this emotional letter bomb. The song, according to the artist, was really meant to be called Cluster Bomb, and the intention of it was to be sung by a woman or through her point of view, really, which is why it was later named Letterbomb, being this letter that she had sent him. The themes of the song range from the political endeavors of the revolution with lyrics like "Where have all the riots gone?" to something a little bit more existentialist, saying "Where will you go when it's all too late?" She then goes on to attack Jimmy directly, saying "Standing still when it's do or die, you better run for your life." It's clear that she doesn't like his attitude at all. She doesn't like how cautious and fearful he is, rather wanting that spontaneous sort of destructive version of himself that she is. Jimmy, while he was fueled to be a rebel, his life really was just based on lies, with a lyric like "The city is burning and it's not my burden," mocking him for how he doesn't really stick to his word at all. She kind of explains how being a true rebel means that you need to fight or die trying, and Jimmy's really not about that life at all. He just wants people to like him. He just wants people to follow him, but he doesn't want to do any of the work for it. And it's in this second pre-chorus where she says, "A figment of your father's rage and your mother's love," calling herself the idiot. She's really saying that he couldn't handle being either at this point, and he's really just no one now. And the song ends in silence, leaving the listeners to contemplate with her parting words. At this point now, Jimmy is hopeless. He is back at square one, only now he has the added pain of heartbreak with him. His depression leads him to isolate in an extended sleep, so he won't really have to deal with the real world anymore. And there's really no reason for him to wake up, at least until September ends. Dun dun dun. So the next song, I don't know if you've heard it before, it's called "Wake Me Up When September Ends." Of course, the song takes place on September 1st. It's another one of the songs that doesn't really have a real connection to the plot, but it can be weaved into the plot, as the song is more about the singer's father, about his life. The song was originally made to be released in 2002, but they just felt like it wasn't ready yet. The song is somber, it's hypnotic, it's just pure writing, and it's pretty beautiful. It's structured very similarly to Good Riddance, if you've ever heard of that. It's gripping, it's fragile, and it's really honest. It has everything that a sad teen really wants to hear. More than that though, it progresses to have a more full production by the end of the song. It switches to electronic guitars, but as far as it relates to the album itself, it could be taken from the perspective of Jesus as he looks back onto his life, really. He looks at his childhood, his friends, his family, all of that, and he kind of decides that he wants to go back home. He recalls that he was happier in the past and that the city really just wasn't made for him. And it kind of shows this lack of innocence, or not this lack of innocence, but this loss of innocence that he's seen in the city. From lyrics like "Hear the sound of the falling rain falling down from an Armageddon flame" from Holiday to "Here comes the rain again falling from the stars." It really shows his progression throughout the past couple months, but in the perspective of the world itself, what was happening, besides the very obvious correlation of taking place in September 9/11, you know, we've been over it a million times. And especially with lyrics like "As my memory rests but never forgets what I lost." It's just such a clear representation of what the country was feeling at the time, what a lot of people were feeling at the time towards the events that were happening at the time, how people were trying to rebuild and reinvent themselves. It's highly regarded as one of the best and and most memorable Green Day songs out there. It accomplishes so much through emotions, through the social commentary, through the multiple meanings of the song. It really relates to almost every listener. As now Jesus of Suburbia has given up on trying to be Saint Jimmy, he is deciding that he's gonna go home. With the next song, Homecoming, being another 5-part song similar to Jesus of Suburbia, we begin with the death of Saint Jimmy, potentially being a voicemail or answering phone message that Saint Jimmy leaves to Whatsername. The ending of the segment saying Jimmy died today as he is reborn again, reborn as Jesus again. The next part being called East 12th Street, taking place now on October 19th, almost 40 days after the beginning of September. He talks about how he's filling out paperwork and feeling this intense sort of regret as he goes back to living a normal life, very different from his alternative past in the city, saying he'd rather be doing something else now, like cigarettes and coffee with the underbelly. Repeating the lyrics, "Someone get me out of here," on and on and on again, it really shows how he feels on the inside, you know? As much as he doesn't want to be this sort of Saint Jimmy persona, he really does miss the city. He really does miss his followers, he misses the people that he surrounded himself with. Being in his hometown is just not the life for him. The third segment being called Nobody Likes You, another callback to Letterbomb. It includes those same taunting lyrics as before, with now an echo saying, "Where'd you go?" Showing that it's very clear that despite everything, he still misses Whatsername. And the second to last part of this song, called Rock and Roll Girlfriend, is a letter given to him by one of his old followers. From the underbelly, his name is Tunny, where he kind of describes his rock and roll life. Not knowing that Saint Jimmy is dead in this sense and that he's back to being Jesus, Tunny goes on to explain his life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, basically. Now, Jesus goes on to read this letter and he reacts to it looking back at his current life, very mundane, and he realizes how much he misses his old life. He looks at the rebellions that had happened while he was gone, detailed by the writings of his followers, and he decides that it's time to go home for real. With the last segment of the song called We're Coming Home Again, another reference to homecoming, he appreciates the struggles that he's been through in his life, saying, "So send my love a letter bomb and visit me in hell. We're the ones going home." This song is anthemic, it's hypnotic again, it's melodies, and it's sort of like militaristic chant, if anything, repeating the lyrics, "We're coming home again." The final words again being, "Nobody likes you, everyone left you." You know how it goes. It's the ending of the song that kind of comes full circle. While he thought that he would be going home to his childhood home, he realized that the city is his real home. And he's really excited for his life in the city again, but it'll still always hold memories of Whatsername. Who's the last song on the album? Oh my gosh, it's like full circle now. The song now taking place on New Year's Day. As Jesus never really became this sort of rebellious anti-hero ever again, he somehow did find a way to sort of find himself, or a new self for him. Or at least he found out what he's not, and that he's not Jimmy for sure. But he also realizes that while he's in the city, he can't stop thinking about Whatsername. She is on his mind 24/7. Like, it's crazy. Especially with lyrics like, "Thought I ran into you down the street, then it turned out to only be a dream." She is living rent-free in that man's subconscious. Lyrics like, "I remember the face but can't remember the name," which is why we call Whatsername, kind of alluding that this whole album is a flashback now. And that's why she's been called Whatsername for the whole album. It's because he can't remember her name. So good, so good. It's such a good song. I agree. And I feel like this is just a perfect way to end the album. So, coming off of the storyline of the album, how exactly does it relate to the time then, the time now? How does it still hold up, really? The songs itself are timeless. The story it'll live on forever. It'll live on for years to come. The themes of angst and the social commentary, they'll also live on for a long time, I'm sure, because in all honesty, wherever there's conflict, there's war, and wherever there's war, there will be music. It's definitely one of the more essential albums of rock, and its themes are exponentially universal. While the direct politics of the song may be dated to the era of 20 years ago, the overarching themes are definitely here to stay. I guess it's good that this album isn't like fully political, because, you know, it has themes of love, it has themes of identity, it has themes of running away, coming back home, you know, finding your people. It's such a coming of age album in the sense that you will relate to it in every minute of your life, honestly. Every day you can listen to it and something will happen that day that you'll be like, oh, this so American Idiot coded. Basically what I'm trying to say is this album is timeless. It'll live on forever. And to answer my question, how does it hold up after 20 years? It holds up perfectly fine. She's doing great. Especially how is it holding up this week, this month? Oh, it's doing awesome. Considering recent events, oh, she's getting her streams. But that's really all I have to say about American Idiot, honestly. Let me know if you guys want to talk about anything else. Any other artists, any other albums, any other genres, whatever y'all are into, let me know. Besides that, have a good day, bye.